Today's passage is from the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 21, verses 1 through 20. 2 Chronicles 21, 1 through 20. Then Jehoshaphat rested with his fathers and was buried with them in the city of David. And Jehoram, his son, succeeded him as king. Jehoram's brothers, the sons of Jehoshaphat, were Azal, Jael, Zechariah, Azua, Mishael, and Shephati. All of these were sons of Jehoshaphat, king of Israel. Their father had given them many gifts of silver and gold and articles of value, as well as fortified cities in Judah. But he had given the kingdom to Jehoram because he was the firstborn son. When Jehoram established himself firmly over his father's kingdom, he put all his brothers to the sword, along with some of the princes of Israel. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. He walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, as the house of Ahab had done, for he married the daughter of Ahab. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord. Nevertheless, because of the covenant of the Lord had made with David, the Lord was not willing to destroy the house of David. He had promised to maintain a lamp for him and his descendants forever. In the time of Jehoram, Edom rebelled against Judah and set up its own king. So Jehoram went there with his officers and his chariots. The Edomites surrounded him and his chariot commanders, but he rose up and broke through by night. To this day, Edom has been in rebellion against Judah. Libnah revolted at the same time because Jehoram had forsaken the Lord, the God of his fathers. He also built high places on the hills of Judah and had caused the people of Jerusalem to prostitute themselves and led Judah astray. Jehoram received a letter from Elijah the prophet, which said, "This is what the Lord, the God of your father David, says. You have not walked in the ways of your father Jehoshaphat, or of Asa king of Judah. But you have walked in the ways of the kings of Israel, and you have led Judah and the people of Jerusalem to prostitute themselves, just as the house of Ahab did. You have also murdered your own brothers, members of your father's house, men who were better than you. So now the Lord is about to strike your people, your sons, your wives, and everything that is yours with a heavy blow. You yourself will be very ill in a lingering disease of the bowels until the disease causes your bowels to come out." The Lord aroused against Jehoram the hostility of the Philistines and the Arabs who lived near the Cushites. They attacked Judah, invaded it, and carried off all the goods found in the king's palace, together with his sons and wives. Not a son was left to him, except Ahaziah, the youngest. After all this, the Lord afflicted Jehoram with an incurable disease of the bowels. In the course of time, at the end of the second year, his bowels came out because of the disease, and he died in great pain. His people made no fire in his honor, as they had for his fathers. Jehoram was 32 years old when he became king. He reigned in Jerusalem 8 years. He passed away to no one's regret, and was buried in the city of David, but not in the tomb of the kings. An epitaph is a short sentence written after someone has died. It's usually something you'll see written on a tombstone or something like that. It's meant to sum up a person's life in a few words. I hope you'll not find this too morbid, but I found some unusual epitaphs that I'd like to share with you today. For instance, one person had written on their tombstone, "Told you I was sick." Another person wrote, "Raised 4 beautiful daughters with only 1 bathroom, and yet there was love." I like that one. A man wrote on his tombstone, "I was hoping for a pyramid." A very true epitaph is, "Now I know something you don't." One family was a little poetic. They wrote, "Here lies Henry Blake. He stepped on the gas instead of the brake." Someone out there genuinely put on their tombstone died from not forwarding that text message 10 times. I have to translate. This was originally in Spanish, but in English it reads, "Here is resting my dearest wife, Brunhilde Jamolte, 1973 to 1997. Lord, please welcome her with the same joy that I send her to you." Last one, perhaps explaining how a man died. The tombstone read, "He loved bacon." Oh, and his wife and kids too. So I want to ask you a question now. And not looking for anyone to answer this out loud, but in your own minds think about this. If today were your last day on earth, what would your epitaph be? If you died, what would people say about your life? Perhaps a better question to ask is, what would you like your epitaph to be? When you leave this world, if someone were to sum up your life in one sentence, in just a few words, what would you want them to say? Now, perhaps you haven't answered this already in mind. Perhaps you know how you want to be remembered. Or maybe you don't. And if not, this is something, as we begin this new year, that's worth considering. What would you like people to say about you once you've left this world? Well, the reason I say all this is today I want to talk about a man who had a terrible epitaph. I want to talk about Jehoram, the son of Josaphat, the king of Judah. Jehoram's epitaph was, "He passed away to no one's regret." That's a terrible epitaph. That is a burn. He passed away to no one's regret. Can you imagine a worse way to be remembered? The entire nation said, "Oh, man, I'm glad he's dead." That is a harsh way to be remembered. Today I want to talk about how we build a legacy like that. Now, I've said several times that the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles are positive books. These focus on Israel at their best and tell them to live that way again. But sometimes to understand our lives at our best, we need to look at what we would be like at our worst. Truth about human nature is that we have a tendency to skip over an article entitled 7 Habits of a Healthy Marriage to go on to read an article that says 7 ways to destroy your marriage. We have a tendency to look at what not to do. And so we'll do that today. We're going to look at what not to do. Because I can see 3 things about Jehoram that led him to have the epitaph, "He died to no one's regret." First, let me say that Jehoram had a good start. He did not start off in the hole. He had every advantage. His father, Jehoshaphat, was one of the best kings in Judah's history. And Jehoshaphat left a strong legacy. He called the people back to the Lord. He ushered in a time of peace and prosperity. When he died, he left his children an example to live by, and he left them gifts of gold and silver and fortified cities. He was a success both spiritually and materially. And since Jehoram was the oldest son, he left the throne in Jerusalem to Jehoram. And Jehoram immediately messed it up. The first act Jehoram had as king was built on jealousy. And really, that's how we build a legacy like Jehoram's. If you want to be remembered like him, the first step is to cultivate personal jealousy. If somebody else has what you want, be jealous. If someone else doesn't seem to have the struggles, doesn't have the problems you face in life, envy's the way to go. If your friend gets what you always hope for, outrage. If you hear someone on the news or online or a celebrity say something that makes you jealous, talk about it all the time to everyone. If you want to have a legacy like Jehoram, cultivate personal jealousy. So the first thing Jehoram did was to act out of jealousy. When he became king, he had his brothers executed. He did not want there to be any other contenders for the throne. Now, as we know, no one else wanted the throne, but that didn't matter to Jehoram. He was not going to let there be any competition. He acted out of jealousy. Shakespeare said that jealousy is a green-eyed monster. I understand that, but personally I wouldn't call it a monster. I would call it a microscope. Jealousy makes little things seem big. Jealousy makes innocent things seem threatening. Because jealousy is always built on insecurity. Jehoram was insecure about his throne, and so he acted out of jealousy to execute his own brothers. A businessman who is jealous of others' success is insecure about his own success in business. A husband or a wife, a boyfriend or a girlfriend who is jealous whenever their partner is just around other people is insecure about their relationship. By the way, the cure for jealousy is love. I know the world sometimes tries to pass off jealousy as a kind of fake love. But the Apostle Paul tells us that genuine love always trusts. Even when there's a reason not to trust, love trusts. Love puts jealousy to death by trusting that my wife is faithful and that my relationship with her is strong. Now, that's the more dangerous approach. That leaves us vulnerable. If I trust someone I love, then that does leave me vulnerable for them to betray that trust and destroy the relationship. On the other hand, if I don't trust someone I love, I might not be as vulnerable to being hurt, but there's a 100% chance that I am going to end up destroying that relationship. The cure to jealousy is genuine love. But that was not Jehoram. He was consumed by jealousy and executed his own brothers. And then we see a second way that Jehoram built this legacy, this epitaph, that he died to no one's regret. Jehoram compromised his convictions. If you want to destroy your legacy, compromise convictions. Because our legacy, a positive legacy, is built on what we will not compromise. A good legacy, a good epitaph, is built on the things that they say, I will not compromise this no matter what. Jehoram compromised his convictions. And because of that, he created this terrible legacy. Now, the specific way that Jehoram compromised his convictions was that he walked in the ways of the kings of Israel. He married the daughter of Ahab. Ahab was the worst king in Israel's history. And Jehoram married his daughter. He walked in those ways. He ignored the countless commands from God not to marry someone outside of the faith. By the way, that's still a difficult command for us. And there are a lot of commands in the Bible I think people find difficult, but I think this is the one that more than any other command gets people to say, did God really say? It gets people to quote Satan from Genesis and say, did God really say? Did God really say that I shouldn't marry or even date someone who's not a Christian? In my experience, I have found that the people who most strongly support this command are those who have, so to speak, been there and done that. It is the person, the Christian, who has been married to the non-Christian. Either they were a Christian and married someone who was not, or one of the two spouses came to faith after the marriage, they are the people who tend to most vocally support these commands. Because they are the ones who know that marriage is tough. And being married to a non-believer just adds a whole nother level of difficulty. Now, clearly I'm not saying that these relationships never work out. And the Apostle Paul explicitly said that if someone comes to Christ and they are married to an unbeliever, then that new faith can sanctify the unbelieving spouse. However, for the people in this room who are not married, if you're looking for a romantic relationship, for a boyfriend or girlfriend, for a future husband or a future wife, be wary. As a Christian writer, Catherine Kelly put it, when a Christian is unequally yoked, when they are in a marriage to someone who is not on the same page as them spiritually, then one of two things happens. Either that Christian will push Christ to the margins of their lives, or the Christian will maintain a robust and living faith in Jesus, and the unbelieving partner will be marginalized. So, Jehoram compromised his conviction. He gave in to what he knew was wrong. He entered into this marriage that had a destructive effect on the rest of his life. And if you want to build a bad legacy, compromise convictions. Now, I've said before, compromise has its place. We need to know when to compromise. Compromise has been called the success of marriage, the genius of politics, and the death of conviction. A legacy worth having is built on the things that we wouldn't compromise. And Jehoram's first compromise led to more compromises. So the third thing Jehoram did to build this terrible legacy was that he compromised with the culture. He went along with what the culture wanted. If you want to destroy your legacy, then just go along with the culture. Do whatever the culture wants you to do. Now, the specific way that Jehoram did this was that he built high places throughout Judah. Probably heard of high places throughout the Bible. High place was a temple to the fertility gods that surrounded Israel. And these were usually built on hills and mountains, because these surrounding nations believed that their gods were literally up in the sky. And so they built temples on mountains to be closer to them. And these temples usually employed temple prostitutes. So in building these high places, Jehoram led the people into both spiritual and literal prostitution. But for us, if I might use the phrase high places in a more symbolic manner, and a high place is anything that the culture says is okay. It's anything the culture wants us to go along with. And if you want to build a legacy like Jehoram has, go along with the culture. If you want his kind of epitaph, always take the path of least resistance. When the culture wants vengeance, don't talk about compassion. When the culture says anything goes, don't hold on to purity. When the culture is cruel to someone who looks different or talks different or thinks different, don't show love. Always go along with the culture. And that'll build the kind of legacy that Jehoram had. Of course, if you want a different legacy, if you want to be the kind of person where after you are gone, people say, we need more of that kind of person, not less. To stand by convictions. Giving in on your convictions, giving into the culture is a sure way to guarantee that at the very best, you have an ambivalent, a neutral legacy. But a legacy that matters. A legacy that is remembered as something good, as something great, is built on the things that we wouldn't compromise. It's built on standing firm in our convictions. So I want to close today's sermon where I started. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want your epitaph in life to be? Jeroboam sacrificed his convictions. He acted out of jealousy, and it created a terrible legacy for him. Parts of Israel went into rebellion against him, and most of his own children, all except for one, were executed in the same kind of power play that Jeroboam made against his brothers. As the preacher Richard DeYoung put it, Jeroboam became the anti-Midas. Everything he touched turned to rust. He believed the lies of sin. He said, I want to secure my throne, and it just ended up costing him his family. He said, I want to be loved by my people, and when he died, no one regretted it. He bought in to every lie that sin tells. And so we come to the sad end of a sad life. No fires burnt in his offering, in his memory. He's not buried in the tomb of the kings. He passed away to no one's regret. How do you want to be remembered? What do you want your epitaph to be? John Getty was a Scottish Presbyterian that went to the island, and I cannot say this name right, Antuam. He traveled there as a missionary, and he died relatively young. He died in his early 50s, after spending 24 years as a missionary on this island. And after his death, a stone pillar was erected on a pulpit in his memory. And on the pillar were inscribed the words, when he landed in 1848, there were no Christians. When he left in 1872, there were no heathens. That's a good epitaph. Moses, the servant of the Lord, has his own epitaph in the book of Deuteronomy, in chapter 34, verse 5. The epitaph for Moses is, and Moses, the servant of the Lord, died in Moab, as the Lord had said. Now, when I'm gone, I don't think there's going to be an epitaph that I brought the population of an entire island to Christ. But perhaps an epitaph worth seeking would include the words, a servant of the Lord died. What do you want your epitaph to be? How do you want to be remembered? Do you want your epitaph to be, he had fun. He did it his way. She had more than 500 followers on Twitter. Her house was always really clean. He watched a lot of television. What would you like your epitaph to be? I think most of us have thought that at some point in our lives. Most of us have wondered what people will say at our funeral. What will they say when I'm gone? So here's my last thought for today. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus spoke two epitaphs in the parable of the talents. He gave an epitaph for a faithful servant who used his master's gifts well. And he gave an epitaph for an unfaithful servant who squandered his master's gifts. For the unfaithful servant, the epitaph was, cast him out into the darkness. For the faithful servant, for the servant who honored his master, the epitaph was, well done, good and faithful servant. What do you want your epitaph to be? In a moment, we're going to stand for an invitation hymn. And as we stand to sing, if you need to take the first step towards a better legacy, if you need to begin a relationship with Christ, if you need to start living by conviction, you have an opportunity today. Or this week, talk to myself, talk to one of the elders. But if you need to start to build a better legacy, you have an opportunity. I ask you'll stand with me now for invitation hymn, which is Lead Me to Calvary, number 176, and we'll sing just the first verse.